Watch the ball leave his boot. That vicious, dipping rocket that no goalkeeper on earth could reach. They call him Falcon now, the Falcon. And you can see why in the violence of that strike. But to understand the Falcon, you first have to meet the little bird who nailed a goalpost to his living room wall. This is the story of Federico Valverde. He was born on the 22nd of July 1998 in Montevideo, a city where football isn't a hobby, it's a faith. The story his family tells is almost too perfect. As a small boy, Federico nailed a goalpost to the wall of the living room and spent years scoring imaginary goals against his own relatives. He was slight, willowy, all legs and ambition. The other kids gave him a nickname that stuck for 2 decades, Pajarito, the little bird. But the little bird could run, and he could strike a ball with a power his frame had no right to produce. By his mid-teens, Peñarol, one of the giants of South American football, knew exactly what they had. In 2015, at just 17 years old, Federico Valverde made his debut for Peñarol. 17. A boy still, thrown into the cauldron of Uruguayan top-flight football. And in his very first season, he didn't just survive, he won. Peñarol lifted the Uruguayan league title, and Pajarito had a winner's medal before he could legally do most things. Scouts across Europe scribbled the same name in their notebooks. A box-to-box engine with a cannon in his right boot, and the humility to do the dirty work no one applauds. By 2016, the biggest club on the planet had made its move. At 18, Federico Valverde left Montevideo for Madrid. It is one thing to be a star in Uruguay. It is another entirely to be a teenager fighting for a future at Real Madrid. There were no shortcuts. He earned his stripes the hard way, through the Castilla reserves, learning the European game brick by brick. Then came a loan to Deportivo La Coruña, a club fighting and ultimately failing to avoid relegation. It was a brutal, unglamorous education in the realities of the sport. But Valverde never hid. He ran, he tackled, he covered ground for a sinking team. And the men watching back in Madrid noticed the character as much as the talent. He came back to the capital with something to prove. And waiting for him was the one man whose approval could change everything. Zinedine Zidane. A man who knew everything about being a midfielder of grace and steel. And in Valverde, he saw a player he could trust to do anything. In the 2019-20 season, Pajarito became a regular. Lung-busting, selfless, relentless, the engine that let the artists around him breathe. And that right boot started to speak. Thunderous strikes from distance, screaming past goalkeepers who'd barely set their feet. That season, Real Madrid were crowned champions of Spain, and the little bird from Montevideo had become a key piece of a European giant. What set him apart was never just the goals. It was the willingness. Ask him to play right back for the team, and he'd do it without a word of complaint. Coaches and teammates said the same thing again and again, that you simply cannot find a more selfless footballer. He gives everything, and asks for nothing. Then came 2022, the year the little bird truly took flight. In El Clasico, the biggest fixture in club football, Valverde scored, becoming only the second Uruguayan ever to find the net in that fixture, after the great Luis Suarez. Second only to Suarez. In a rivalry more than a century old, that is rarefied company. But it was Europe's grandest stage that defined his year. Real Madrid stormed through an unforgettable Champions League campaign and reached the final. And in that final, it was Valverde who provided the moment. The driving run, the low ball across the face of goal, the key pass that decided the biggest game in club football. Champions of Europe. At 23, Federico Valverde stood at the summit of the sport. And by now the nickname no longer fit. The slight little bird had grown stronger, sharper, more decisive. So he gave himself a new one. El Falcon, the Falcon.
A predator now, not prey. The strikes grew more violent. The presence in midfield, more commanding. Defenders no longer saw a willowy teenager, they saw a force.
And still, beneath the new ferocity, the old humility remained. He ran the same yards. He tracked the same runners. He asked for nothing. In 2024, Real Madrid marched once more to the summit of the Champions League. And once again, Valverde was at the heart of it, covering, driving, doing the unseen work that wins finals. A second European crown, 2 Champions Leagues before his 26th birthday, one not as a passenger, but as one of the engines that made the whole machine run. 2 Champions Leagues. The little bird who nailed a goalpost to his wall now had 2 of the heaviest trophies in football. But the Falcon's flight has carried a cost. The role that makes Valverde so valuable, playing anywhere, running everywhere, is also the most punishing job on the pitch. Out of position at right back, plugging gaps, sacrificing his own numbers, his own glory, so that the stars beside him could shine. Selflessness has a price, and Valverde has paid it season after season. There were nights of criticism, voices who wanted to see the goalscorer unleashed, not the water carrier restrained. There were losses that cut deep, knockouts that ended in silence. And in the sky blue of Uruguay, there has been heartbreak too. Tournaments that ended short of the dream, a nation's enormous expectation pressing down on young shoulders. But here is what defines him. He never complained. He never demanded a different role. He simply went back out and ran again. Because for all the glory at Madrid, there is one shirt that means something deeper. The Celeste of Uruguay. This is the country that gave him football as a religion. The country of Suarez, of Cavani, of a tiny nation that has terrorized the giants for a century through sheer heart. And now the torch has passed. Federico Valverde is the heartbeat of Uruguay's midfield, the player around whom a new generation is built. Which brings us to 2026. At the World Cup, Valverde anchors the Uruguayan midfield, the engine, the leader, the Falcon at the peak of his powers, carrying a nation's hopes once more. Every yard he covers, every tackle he makes, every thunderbolt he loads up, it all traces back to a living room in Montevideo and a goalpost nailed to a wall. Think about what it takes to make this journey. Not just the talent. Montevideo is full of talented boys. It takes the relentless work, the humility to play right back for the team, the willingness to do the job no one sees. That is the lesson of Federico Valverde. The little bird didn't become the Falcon through magic. He became it through years of selfless, ego-free, lung-burning work. Pajarito to Falcon. The little bird to the Falcon. From a goalpost on a living room wall to 2 Champions Leagues and a World Cup stage. And the most remarkable part? At the heart of all that ferocity, he is still, somehow, that humble kid from Montevideo, running for the team, asking for nothing in return. If this story stayed with you, subscribe to Beyond the Boots for more. The boots tell the story. We just follow the footsteps.